and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan, and today we are doing a Gameweek 19 Wildcard video. It's the second to last week to use your wildcard, so it's going to be a pretty important video for many people. I'm also going to be talking about some strategies and some plans around AFCON and the Asia Cup, with many players, including Son and Salah, disappearing off for a couple of game weeks. And I want to talk about some players that you need to bring into your team, whether you are wildcarding or not. So if you guys enjoyed this one, drop a like, do subscribe. Let's get started. So starting off in goal, we are going to go for Dubravka. Now, he is one of the players in this team that I'm not 100% convinced by. I think you can maybe choose if you want to go for Dubravka or maybe go elsewhere. You can maybe upgrade. This team value is 100 million on the dot. So there is a possibility to upgrade some of these positions if you do have a little bit more money to spend. But Dubravka, I think at 4.2 million is still an absolute gift in FPL. And if you're looking for a long-term goalkeeper, I think Dubravka at this price is definitely the best answer, as long as Newcastle don't sign a new goalkeeper. Now, the current word is that I don't think they are going to, but there is definitely still a chance that they do. So it's up to you. Do you want to take that risk that Dubravka is going to be replaced by a new goalkeeper in the January transfer window or not? If you don't think it's going to happen, you're happy to take a risk on a super cheap goalkeeper, then Dubravka is definitely going to be your guy for the long term. But there are a couple of other options. Leno, Raya, and maybe Martinez at Aston Villa also look okay as well. So there's different options. I'm not really massively convinced by any particular goalkeeper, so Dubravka makes this particular team. In defense, we have got Pedro Porro. Obviously, he has been a big target for us to go for recently. I think when you compare him to Trent Alexander-Arnold and Trippier, Porro is going to provide the best value for money at 5.5 million because he is that little bit cheaper than those other guys. And I think his output is going to be pretty much the same. We're talking about a guy who is essentially playing as the 4th or 5th attacker in this Spurs team, which is a super attacking team. He is on those set pieces as well. And I think this run of fixtures is actually very nice for Spurs. I kind of like the look of this. I think Spurs can do well. I think Porro can definitely get some decent points here as well. Next up, we have got Gabriel of Arsenal. Next fixture against West Ham, which is an okay fixture. After that, the fixtures do look really nice. Now, we know that Arsenal have obviously been a top defence this season, and I think their top defence is possibly going to continue. You can definitely see 2-3 clean sheets, and I think that's good enough at 4.9 million. Of course, if you prefer to go for Saliba, that's absolutely fine, but for the record, I do think Gabriel and Saliba are both pretty much nailed on as much as each other. And finally, in defence, I've gone for Dan Burn, which is a bit of an interesting shout. 4.4 million. Not too many people have him right now because he's just returning from injury. But I think at this price, he is one of the best value for money defenders that you can get in FPL at the moment. We know he's got that little bit of attacking threat with his superior height. The Nottingham Forest fixture is definitely a good one, and Newcastle will be looking to keep a clean sheet in that one. The fixtures after that aren't great in the short term, but we do have some players on the bench that can cover Burn. And after that, the fixtures do look really good after the Liverpool, City and Aston Villa fixture. So I do think Burn is going to be very good. Now, of course, this defense is reasonably cheap. A lot of you guys are going to want to go for the likes of Trippier and Trent Alexander-Arnold in your team. That is going to be budget dependent, but for this team and trying to keep things balanced and at a cheap value, I have gone without the likes of Trippier and Trent. But that's not to say they're bad picks. If you can afford it, if you can manage to work them in, then I would say absolutely go for them. But for this team, no. We're going pretty cheap. In midfield, we have got Salah as our first pick. Now, he only has 2 more fixtures before he disappears off to AFCON. That's going to be in game week 21. So, yeah. Until then, we do have Burnley and Newcastle. And I think this Burnley game in particular is going to be a fixture we will be looking to captain Salah. So whether you're on a wild card or not, I still would maintain Salah in the team. We can think about transferring him out. I'm going to show you some plans of how you might transfer out the likes of Salah after the next 2 game weeks. The earliest he can come back is going to be in game week 22. That's if Egypt somehow get knocked out of the group stages. But looking at their group stage, I don't think they're going to get knocked out. And we're looking really at game week 25 before Salah is guaranteed to be back in the Liverpool team. Before then, is kind of unlikely. So as long as Egypt make the top 4 in the AFCON tournament, then it is going to be Salah out till game week 25. So we need to talk about that very soon. Next up, we've got Saka in his team. Good fixtures, very good fixtures for Arsenal, particularly for an attacking point of view. Even the West Ham at home game, expect Arsenal to get attacking returns in this one. Is Saka great value for money at 9 million? Not necessarily, but he's such a high-owned player, and the fixtures are so good. This kind of difficult to look away from Saka at the moment. So he is going to still maintain in this wildcard team. Next up, Richarlison, a real interesting player that is getting more and more hype recently. He's been playing as the central striker and will probably continue to do so, particularly when Son goes off to the Asia Cup. He is in a similar situation to Salah in that regard, where Son could technically come back slightly earlier. He could come back in game week 24. I think that's kind of a possibility. If South Korea don't make it to the final, then yeah, we could possibly see Son in game week 24. But again, 25 is the latest Son could be back. But Richarlison, whether Son's at the club or not, is playing as the main central striker, and he's listed as a midfielder in FPL. He's probably going to be on penalties when Son is at the Asian Cup. I think that's a very good pick, and at 3.1 million, 3.1% ownership, he has a differential as well, a real good differential, a solid differential, and I don't think there's too many convincing differentials at the moment, but Richarlison would definitely fall into that category. You can see more and more top FPL managers are looking to pick up Richarlison at the moment, so he definitely makes this wildcard team as well. And we're going to finish off the midfield with a four-man. And it's going to be Palmer. Yes, of course, Palmer's got to make this team. He is pretty much essential at this point. 5.6 million is crazy as a price. Great fixtures, on penalties, in fantastic form. Probably Chelsea's best player at the moment. And hopefully when Nkunku comes back, then Chelsea are only going to get better. Palmer is going to have another player to create for. And there's going to be even more attacking returns. So I'm not worried about Palmer. Don't even think he'll be taken off penalties as long as he keeps scoring them, to be fair. I don't think Nkunku is going to take him off Palmer until Palmer misses one. So I think he's a real gem, a real good player, and like I say, there's very few excuses to not own Palmer at this stage in FPL. He's pretty much a must-have at this price with these fixtures, with this form. He's an absolute gem in FPL. And moving up front, guys, we are going to go for Erling Haaland first of all, and we're not exactly sure if he is going to be available for this Everton game, but I think he has got a good chance. We have seen him pictured training again, so it is going to be touch and go for this Everton game. But if you are on a wild card, I would be looking to keep him. If you still have him in your team and you're not wildcarding, I would look to keep him. And if you don't have him right now, I would be keeping one eye on him in order to try and get him back. Game week 19 would be ideal if he's available to get him back for this Everton fixture. If not, we do need to be looking at having him back for game week 20 as well. So Haaland is going to be super, super important, particularly when the other two big premium players, Salah and Son, are not playing. Haaland is going to be pretty much our set and forget captain for 5-6 game weeks, maybe even more. So really, really important player. If you're on a wild card, get him back in your team now, ready to go. We can cover him on the bench if he is out for the Everton game, but I do think he is going to be back for the Sheffield United game at the latest, at current, and that is the game week you are going to want to be captaining him for as well. Next up, we've got Ollie Watkins. Disappointing result in game week 18 against Sheffield United, but he's still such a superstar at the moment. He has been in great form all season, a top scoring FPL asset. Is he captain material? Well, maybe some of our minds have been changed on that one after recent results, maybe against Sheffield United, and obviously against Luton Town a few months ago as well. But still, a really important player to have in your FPL team. Super high own for a good reason. High scoring, consistent as well, or reasonably consistent at least. Yeah, we want him in a team. That Burnley game in 20 is definitely going to be appealing as well. And we're going to finish off this starting 11 with Dominic Solanke, who has obviously been a hype player recently. We are hoping that we are going to get a double game week for Solanke and Bournemouth at a certain point, and that's going to include the Luton fixture, which unfortunately had to be abandoned the other game week. So it's going to be nice to have a player like Solanke in your team, to have that player ready to go on the double game week. That's going to be very nice. And by the way, Erling Haaland, we can say a similar thing about that. With him, obviously, well, Man City in general not playing against Brentford in 18. That's going to be rescheduled in the near future. So already we've got two players ready to go for a future double game week that we know is going to come reasonably soon. So yeah, Solanke against Fulham at home, it's a decent fixture. The fixtures after that are okay, a bit of a mixed bag, but he's been in good form. He's on penalties. Bournemouth look good in attack in general at the moment. I don't see any reason not to go for him. And I think looking at the midfielders available to us right now, I think if you're on a wild card, you pick one of Salah or Son and not both. You probably go for Salah. And after that, we're kind of running out of midfielders to pick from. Unless you want to go super differential with a fifth midfielder, like, I don't know, Brennan Johnson. You can go Kulusevski potentially if you can afford to go that expensive. You could maybe go for Brennan Johnson if you want to take a risk that way. There's different players for midfield, but I do think Solanke is more reliable as a forward than a lot of the fifth midfielders that we might be thinking about going for at the moment. So that's why I have gone for a 3-4-3 formation for this wildcard team, which I think is going to be a good formation moving forward as well. Let's bring up the bench. We've got Turner, 3.9 million goalkeeper, seems to be back into the Nottingham Forest team, which is, I guess, good news for him. Malo Gusto, 4.1 million defender. I think that's going to be great value for money there, especially if Reece James is going to be out for a couple of months. Gusto is going to be a regularly starting right back. He won't start every game, but he should get enough game time that justifies spending 4.1 million. You can maybe sub him in or play him for certain matches when, you know, for example, Dan Burn, when he's got difficult fixtures, maybe Gusto can come in. He plays Luton Town, of course, in game week 20. So that's going to be a really nice time to play Gusto. You can even play him this game week as well if you really wanted to. We've got McAtee as our fifth midfielder. Super cheap, 4.4 million. Regularly starting. A little bit of attacking threat he has. He plays for Sheffield United, of course. So he's an okay pick if you're looking for a fifth midfielder and you don't want to spend very much money if you are on this formation. And finally, I've gone for Ethan Pinnock as my final defender. Again, looking forward to a double game week for Brentford. I think that's going to be quite useful. And just in general, Brentford are not such a bad defence. I'm just kind of looking for a cheap defender here. You could go for maybe the likes of Konsa at 4.6 as well. I think he's absolutely fine in this kind of position as your extra defender. There's a few other options. No one really massively convinces me, so I've gone for Pinnock just for that upcoming double game week. We don't know when it's going to be. Hopefully we find out some more information about that very soon. So that is going to be my wildcard team. I have got some suggestions of how to work around the Asia Cup and AFCON and how to make that work for you. Obviously, if Haaland doesn't play this week, you do have Gusto, you do have McAtee and Pinnock, all have decent fixtures this week, so they can cover Haaland, but let's throw a captain's armband before we go and talk about anything else. And I think Salah is going to have to be the captain for this game week against Burnley. I think that's pretty obvious. I think most of us will be on the same page. I'll put the vice-captain on Saka against West Ham for now, but I would be tempted by a cheeky punt on Palmer against Crystal Palace. I think Haaland is probably not going to be a vice-captain, really, because I think if we're captaining Salah, I think we agree on that one. Haaland, if we are not 100% sure if he's going to start or not, I think we need to have a more reliable vice-captain who we know is going to start, so we don't end up in a position where, you know, for some reason Salah doesn't play, then Haaland is also a risk as well. You could end up with no captain for the game week, and I don't think it's worth taking that risk. So Salah captain, Saka vice-captain for this game week 19 wildcard team. And I'd be kind of interested to see, is this close to what you guys have already? Because if it is, without a wildcard, then you could be in a pretty crazy position right now. But let's talk about some plans. Okay, so we are back on the Fantasy Football Hub My Team tool, just the greatest tool for planning. I think, I'm sure a lot of you guys are using it and loving it. I know I am. If you want to check this out and get this for free on your free trial for the Christmas deal, make sure you are checking out the link in the description to check out Fantasy Football Hub. Of course, when you go and use that link, it also helps support the channel as well. So make sure you are checking this tool out. Super useful for all of you FPL managers who do want to elevate your game to the top. But looking through this team, like I say, we can rotate these defenders a little bit. I think we would be looking to play Dan Burn in game week 19. But then moving on to game week 20, we'll switch up a little bit. Gusto coming in against Luton Town. If we think it's likely that Gusto's going to play there, I think he makes a nice player to come in. We have got Pinnock against Crystal Palace there as well, so there's multiple options for you to go in there. We would probably look to switch the captain's armband to Haaland in game week 20 against Sheffield United. Vice-captain, I've put on Salah against Newcastle. I think that's probably the way I would go, but Cole Palmer is also an option there. We could potentially give him vice-captain as well. Luton, decent fixture, of course. Moving on into game week 21, this is where things get interesting. So, Salah goes off to AFCON this game week, and a lot of us are going to be looking to remove one of Salah or Son, maybe even both, if you can do that. And there's one player who I really, really like as a midfielder to bring in for game week 21. And you could even, if you're on a wildcard, you could even start with this player if you wanted to, but I think this is a good opportunity. So, this is the player. His name is Jarrod Bowen. I'm sure you guys have heard of him already. But if we transfer out Salah and bring in Bowen for this game week, then that is going to be really, really handy. There we go. He's the top suggestion on the Fantasy Football Hub algorithm to bring in as well. So really high predicted points. This game week 21, he plays against Sheffield United. So it's a really nice entry point for you to go in on Bowen, removing Salah. There are a couple of options. You could also go for Kulusevski here. You could also maybe go for, I guess you could kind of go for Phil Foden if you wanted to go the Man City route in that one. But I think I would prefer Bowen. I think he's a bit more reliable, a bit more trustworthy. trustworthy, and he's just a real consistent performer in FPL. Now, after that, it's up to you whether you want to leave the money in the bank or not. That's really up to you. You can either spend it or you can leave it in the bank, get ready for a future game week. I'm just going to lock in those transfers there on the app. But if we move forward, game week 25, so just looking through these game weeks, by the way, continue to switch the defenders up for various game weeks. Of course, you're going to be making more transfers throughout these game weeks, but I've tried to build a team where there's no transfers that are necessarily that you have to make, other than that Salah to Bowen or whoever, and you have the other transfers to just play around based on injuries and suspensions, new information, new players coming into form, players falling out of form, and you can make your transfers based on that, just as we do all season, really. So, yeah, see if anyone emerges. But the main transfers would be Salah to Bowen in 21. And then moving on to game week 25, where we probably think that Bowen is going to come back for this game week. At that point, you can switch him back for Salah. Hopefully you've got enough money in the bank to do that. And remember, guys, if you are selling Salah and you bought Salah at a cheap price, when you sell him, your selling price is going to be lower than your buying price. So make sure you do have a little bit of money in the bank, a little bit of money spare, so you can still move back Salah into your team. And also, you might be thinking at this point, can we get Son back into our team? And I think the way to do that is actually going to be to sell Saka. Now, it's a difficult time to sell Saka because he plays, in this period, he plays against Burnley, and then he plays against Newcastle, but then he plays against Sheffield United. So they are good fixtures, but I just am not sure, and I've said this before, I love Saka as a player, I love him as an FPL asset, but to me, he is not good value for money at 9 million. Like, there's a lot of players around the 6 to 7 million mark, 7.5, maybe 8, who can perform and score just as well as Saka. So I do think, particularly if you don't have the money to upgrade Richarlison back up to a Son, or, you know, you can't find a way of doing that, then maybe Son is the one to come in for Saka at this point. So we bin off Saka and bring Son back into the team, who I think is a better pick. He is a little bit more expensive than Saka, obviously, but you're going to have to kind of work this out with your own budget. It's why I've started with this team so cheap, to make sure we do have a little bit of cash flow still in our teams, where we can make these transfers and move the players out and in our teams as well. But I think this would make a really good team. I think it's a really good strategy. Of course, in and around moving Salah and Son in and out of your team, you also got to be aware of form. You've got to be aware of double game weeks that do come into play. We could have double game week before we even see the players return from AFCON and the Asia Cup. You also notice there's no other players in this team that are going off to the Asia Cup or AFCON. So no Hwang, no Kudus. These are players you're going to have to deal with as well. Semenyo as well, if you guys have him on your bench at the moment. Here's another player who is going to be going off to AFCON. So there is still a few other players who will cause issues around AFCON and the Asia Cup from game week 21 onwards. And you just got to be aware of that one and try and think about how you're going to move them out. Of course, in game week 18, I personally removed Ait-Nouri from my team because I know he's not going to be a good long-term pick during this period. He's going to be playing at AFCON, and you guys got to be aware of that one as well. But there you go, guys. That is the plan. I think a lot of you guys are going to have a team that is similar to this anyway. A lot of you guys will have a plan that's similar to this anyway. And if so, you're in a great position. You're going to be just as good as all of the wildcarders this week, which is really amazing stuff. But if you do need to freshen up your team, this is the kind of wildcard I'd go for right now. And this is the kind of strategy I would implement in order to get Salah, Son in, out of my team and make sure we are capitalizing. But yeah, we are going to be going without Son for game week 19 and 20 using this strategy. That's going to be a little bit of a risk, but I think it's fine. I think it's fine to do that. But yeah, only if you're wildcarding. If you're not wildcarding, just keep Salah and Son until game week 21 comes around. You can just keep them for now. The other players, like Ait-Nouri, Hwang, Kudus, whoever, they are optional sells right now. But yeah, Salah, Son, you got to be keeping these guys until they go off. So that is going to be the end of the video. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you did, please do drop a like. It really does help out the channel. Make sure you subscribe as well. There's going to be a few more videos before the game week 19 deadline. I know it is coming really fast, but we're going to do our best to try and get some content out for you guys. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.